Claire Hargrove had everything money could buy, except the one thing that would tear her perfect world apart. When the lonely heiress hired a handsome black chef for what should have been just one simple family dinner, she had no idea she was about to risk everything her privileged life had given her. What started as professional boundaries would spiral into forbidden feelings, family scandals, and a choice that would force her to decide between the approval she'd always craved and a love that could destroy her reputation forever. But when her ex-boyfriend discovered her secret and threatened to expose everything, Claire realized that some hungers can't be satisfied by money, and some hearts are worth losing everything for. The question wasn't whether she was brave enough to fight for love, but whether love was strong enough to survive the brutal judgment of high society. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story about courage and forbidden love will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about following your heart. The morning light filtered through Claire Hargrove's kitchen windows, casting long shadows across marble countertops that had never seen a real meal prepared on them. She stood at the granite island, surrounded by printed emails, seating charts, and menu cards arranged in perfect rows. Her fingers traced the edge of a place-setting diagram for the 100th time. Tonight had to be perfect. It had to be. The house felt too big around her, filled with expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine rather than a home. Everything was cream and gold and spotless. Everything was exactly how her mother had designed it before she died 3 years ago. Claire hadn't changed a single thing, afraid that moving even one picture frame might disturb the fragile peace she'd built here. Her phone buzzed against the counter. The screen showed her father's name, and her stomach tightened. "Hello, Dad." "Claire." Thomas Hargrove's voice was formal, distant. It had always been that way, but it seemed worse since Mom died. "I wanted to confirm tonight's dinner. 7 o'clock?" "Yes, 7 sharp." She picked up a pen and checked his name off her list. "Aunt Evelyn is coming too. I thought it would be nice to have family together." A pause. "I see. And you're cooking?" The question stung because they both knew the answer. Claire could barely make toast without burning it. "I'm hiring someone, a chef." "Good, that's sensible." Another pause. "I'll see you tonight." The line went dead. Claire stared at her phone, fighting the familiar ache in her chest. 3 words. That's all her father ever seemed to have for her. She wondered if he'd said more words to his secretary this morning than he'd spoken to his only daughter in the past month. She opened her laptop and typed "Private Chef Atlanta" into the search bar. The first few results were companies that required weeks of notice and charged thousands of dollars. She scrolled down past the fancy websites with perfect photos until she found something simpler. A small business called Reed Catering, Intimate Dining Experiences. The website was clean but basic. No flashy photos, just a simple description. Chef Malik Reed provides personalized dining experiences in your home. Fresh ingredients, classic techniques, memorable meals. There was one picture, a black man with kind eyes and strong hands chopping vegetables. He looked focused, calm. Claire clicked on the contact form before she could second-guess herself. She typed quickly, "Need chef for family dinner tonight, 7 p.m., 3 people. Simple but elegant menu. Please confirm availability." She hesitated before adding, "This is very important." Her finger hovered over the send button. Hiring a stranger felt risky, but what choice did she have? Mrs. Benton, the house manager, was visiting her sick sister in Florida. Diana, her assistant, had already done so much to help arrange this dinner. Claire was on her own. She clicked send. The response came within an hour. "Available. Will arrive at 2 p.m. to prep. Menu suggestions attached based on party size. Monsieur Reed." Claire opened the attachment. The menu was perfect. roasted chicken with herbs, seasonal vegetables, a simple salad. Nothing too fancy, nothing that would overshadow conversation. She wrote back, accepting his proposal, and gave her address. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Claire checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, smoothing her blonde hair and adjusting her cashmere sweater. She opened the door to find the man from the website standing on her porch, holding 2 large bags and a knife case. "Ms. Hargrove, I'm Malik Reed." He was taller than she'd expected, with broad shoulders and an easy stance. His dark skin was smooth, his black hair cut short and neat. He wore dark jeans and a simple white button-down shirt rolled up at the sleeves. There was something steady about him, like he belonged wherever he stood. "Yes, hello." Claire stepped aside to let him in. "The kitchen is this way." She led him through the formal living room, past furniture that had never been sat on and books that had never been read. She could feel him taking in the space without judgment, just observing. The kitchen was her favorite room, even if she rarely used it. It had a large island, professional-grade appliances her mother had insisted on, and windows that looked out onto the garden. It felt warm here, somehow more real than the rest of the house. "Beautiful space," Malik said, setting his bags on the counter. "Mind if I look around, get familiar with everything?" "Of course." Claire watched as he opened cabinets and drawers, checking for pots and utensils. His movements were efficient, purposeful. "Is there anything you need that isn't here? Looks like you're well equipped." He pulled out a cutting board and began unpacking vegetables from his bag. "Tell me about your guests tonight. Any food allergies? Things they especially like or dislike?" Claire sat on one of the island stools. "My father and my aunt. Dad likes simple food, nothing too creative. Aunt Evelyn has opinions about everything, so she'll find something to complain about no matter what we serve." Malik glanced up from the carrots he was washing. "Sounds like you're nervous about tonight." The observation caught her off guard. She was used to people, assistants, housekeepers, repair people, who came to her home and kept things professional and distant. They didn't notice her feelings or comment on them. "I just want it to go well," she said carefully. "Family dinners can be tricky." He began peeling carrots with quick practice strokes. "How long since you've all been together?" "A few months. We're not very close." The words came out before she could stop them. She immediately felt embarrassed. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about my family problems." "No problem at all." Malik's voice was gentle. "Sometimes it helps to talk about the people we're cooking for. Gives me a better sense of what kind of meal will work." Claire watched his hands as he worked. They were strong and sure, moving the knife in a steady rhythm. There was something soothing about it, like watching someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "My mother used to cook," she said quietly. "Nothing fancy, but she made an effort. Sunday dinners, birthday cakes, that sort of thing. She died 3 years ago, and we've just drifted apart since then." Malik nodded, but didn't push for more. He moved to the stove and began heating oil in a heavy pan. What was her favorite thing to make? Pot roast. Claire smiled despite herself. Every Sunday, Dad would complain that it was too simple, but he always had seconds. Comfort food has its place. Malik seasoned the chicken pieces and began browning them in the pan. The kitchen filled with the sound of sizzling and the smell of herbs. Sometimes simple is exactly what people need. Claire found herself relaxing as she watched him work. He moved through her kitchen like he belonged there, never rushing, but never wasting motion. When he needed something, he asked politely, but didn't wait for her to get it. He wasn't treating her like a boss or a client. He was just including her. "Can I help with anything?" she asked. Malik looked surprised. You don't need to help. This is what you hired me for. I know, but Claire gestured around the empty kitchen. I feel useless just sitting here. He considered this. If you want, you could wash the herbs. Nothing complicated. Claire moved to the sink, grateful to have something to do with her hands. She'd never washed herbs before, but she watched Malik demonstrate and tried to copy his movements. The parsley felt delicate between her fingers, and she was afraid of damaging it. Relax, Malik said, noticing her careful handling. Plants are tougher than they look. She tried to loosen her grip, but her hands were shaking slightly. The dinner tonight felt enormous in her mind, loaded with the weight of months of distance and years of careful politeness with her father. If it went wrong. Here. Malik moved to the sink beside her and handed her a glass of water. Take a breath. Claire took the water gratefully, embarrassed that her nervousness was so obvious. Sorry, I'm not usually like this. Like what? So, she searched for the word. Anxious, out of control. Having your family over for dinner is a big deal, Malik said simply. It's normal to want it to be special. The kindness in his voice almost undid her. When was the last time someone had spoken to her with such genuine understanding? She drank the water slowly, letting her breathing settle. Thank you, she said. No problem. Malik returned to the stove, turning the chicken pieces. How about we tackle this menu together? I'll handle the main cooking, but maybe you can help with the sides? Claire nodded, feeling something loosen in her chest. For the first time in months, she wasn't facing a challenge alone. They worked side by side for the next hour, Malik guiding her through simple tasks while he handled the more complex preparations. Claire found herself actually enjoying the process. There was something meditative about chopping vegetables, something satisfying about seeing raw ingredients transform into something beautiful. You're a natural, Malik said as she finished slicing green beans. I highly doubt that. But Claire was smiling as she said it. I'm serious. You've got good instincts. He tasted the sauce he was making and added a pinch of salt. Most people rush when they're nervous. You're taking your time, paying attention. The compliment warmed her more than it should have. Claire couldn't remember the last time someone had praised her for anything other than her charity work or her mother's furniture choices. At 4 o'clock, Malik suggested they take a break while the chicken finished braising. Claire made coffee, and they sat at the kitchen island together. So, what made you become a chef? She asked. My grandmother. Malik's face softened. She raised me after my parents died. Never had much money, but she could make magic with whatever was in the cupboard. I learned by watching her, asking questions. That's lovely. Is she still? Passed last year, but every time I cook, I feel like she's right there telling me to taste as I go and never let anything burn. He smiled. What about you? What do you do when you're not hosting family dinners? Claire hesitated. How to explain that she didn't really do anything? That she lived off her trust fund and filled her days with charity committee meetings and shopping and trying to stay busy enough to avoid thinking about how empty her life felt? I volunteer, she said finally. Hospital fundraising, mostly, and I help maintain some of my mother's charitable commitments. It was true, but it felt thin saying it out loud. Malik nodded politely, but she could see him processing what she wasn't saying. That's important work, he said. Is it though? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just playing at being useful. Writing checks and showing up to galas isn't the same as actually helping people. Malik studied her face. What would actually helping people look like to you? No one had ever asked her that question before. Claire found herself thinking about it seriously. I don't know. Something more direct, I guess. More personal? Like cooking dinner for people you care about? The observation hit her unexpectedly. Claire looked around the kitchen, warm and alive for the first time in years, filled with good smells and the evidence of shared work. Yeah, she said quietly. Like that. The timer on the oven chimed, breaking the moment. Malik stood to check the chicken, and Claire watched him work, something shifting in her chest. She'd hired him to solve a problem, to get through one difficult evening. But sitting here, talking with him, she realized how long it had been since she'd had a real conversation with anyone. How long since someone had seen her as more than just Thomas Hargrove's daughter or Mrs. Hargrove's charitable successor. "Smells amazing," she said. "It's going to be perfect," Malik assured her. "Your father and aunt are lucky people." Claire hoped he was right, but for the first time in months, she found herself looking forward to dinner, not just as an ordeal to survive, but as something that might actually bring them together. The kitchen was ready. The food was ready. Whether her family was ready for this version of her, relaxed and flower-dusted and genuinely happy, remained to be seen. But as she watched Malik put the finishing touches on their meal, Claire decided she was ready to find out. At 6:30, Claire stood in front of her bedroom mirror, changing clothes for the third time. The black dress felt too formal. The sweater and slacks felt too casual. She finally settled on a navy blue blouse and dark jeans, something that felt like her, not like the perfectly put-together version of herself she usually presented to her father. Downstairs, Malik was setting the dining room table with her mother's good china. Claire had suggested they eat in the kitchen, but he gently insisted the dining room would feel more special. He was right. The formal table looked warm and inviting, with the soft lighting and fresh flowers he'd arranged. "How are you feeling?" he asked when she appeared in the doorway. "Terrified," Claire admitted. "But good terrified, if that makes sense." "It does." Malik straightened a water glass. "I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. Just holler." "Actually," Claire hesitated, "would you mind staying? Nearby? Not serving or anything formal, but just here?" She expected him to remind her that wasn't part of their agreement. Instead, he nodded. "Of course." The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Claire smoothed her hair one last time and went to answer it. Her father stood on the porch in his usual dark suit, looking like he was attending a business meeting rather than dinner with his daughter. Behind him, Aunt Evelyn adjusted her perfectly styled silver hair and checked her watch. "Dad, Aunt Evelyn." Claire stepped aside to let them in. "Thank you for coming." "Claire, darling." Evelyn air-kissed her cheek, leaving behind the scent of expensive perfume. "What a lovely surprise to get your invitation. It's been far too long since we've had a proper family dinner." Thomas nodded stiffly. "The house looks well." They moved to the living room, where Claire had set out wine and appetizers. Malik had prepared simple but elegant bites, cheese and herb tarts that made the room smell like a French bakery. "These are delicious," Evelyn said, taking a second tart. "Where did you find them?" We made them here, this afternoon." Claire took a small sip of wine for courage. "We?" Thomas looked confused. Before Claire could answer, Malik appeared in the doorway. "Excuse me, Ms. Hargrove. The first course is ready when you are." Claire felt the temperature in the room shift. Evelyn's eyebrows rose slightly. Thomas studied Malik with the careful attention he usually reserved for business contracts. "Dad, Aunt Evelyn, this is Malik Reed. He's the chef I hired for tonight." Malik stepped forward and extended his hand. "Mr. Hargrove, Mrs. Kessler. Pleasure to meet you." Thomas shook his hand briefly. Evelyn smiled her social smile. the one she used at charity events when she wanted to appear gracious but maintain distance. How wonderful, Evelyn said. Claire mentioned she was having dinner catered, though I must say, it's unusual to have the chef introduce himself directly. Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks. I asked Malik to join us for introductions. He's been so helpful today. An uncomfortable silence stretched across the room. Malik seemed entirely unbothered by it, but Claire could see her father processing the situation, trying to understand why she was treating the help like a guest. Well, Thomas said finally, should we move to dinner? In the dining room, Malik served the first course, a delicate butternut squash soup with fresh herbs. Claire watched her father take his first spoonful, then a second. His expression softened slightly. This is excellent, Thomas said. Very refined. Thank you, sir. Malik refilled their water glasses. The recipe is actually quite simple. Sometimes the best flavors come from letting the ingredients speak for themselves. How philosophical, Evelyn murmured. And where did you train, Mr. Reed? Claire tensed. She could hear the subtle challenge in her aunt's tone, the way she was probing for credentials and pedigree. Mostly in restaurant kitchens around the city, Malik replied easily. And my grandmother's kitchen in Savannah. She was my real teacher. How charming! Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. Self-taught, then? Evelyn, Claire said quietly, a warning in her voice. But Malik didn't seem offended. Some of the best cooks I know learned by doing rather than reading about it. Food is about feeding people well, not about diplomas. Thomas looked up from his soup. That's true in business too. I've met plenty of MBAs who couldn't run a lemonade stand. Claire blinked in surprise. Her father rarely agreed with anyone, especially someone he'd just met. But something in Malik's straightforward manner seemed to have earned his respect. The main course was even better than the soup. The chicken was perfectly tender, the vegetables bright and flavorful. Claire found herself eating more than she had in weeks, not because she was hungry, but because everything tasted so good. Claire tells me you haven't all been together in a while, Malik said as he served seconds to Thomas, who had cleaned his plate. We've all been busy, Thomas replied. Work, travel, you know how it is. I do. Family time gets harder as everyone gets pulled in different directions. Malik glanced at Claire. But it's worth making the effort. Yes, well. Evelyn dabbed her lips with her napkin. Some of us have more flexible schedules than others. Claire has always been fortunate in that regard. The comment stung, carrying its familiar implication that Claire's life was easy, unimportant. But before she could respond, Malik spoke up. Ms. Hargrove mentioned she's involved in hospital fundraising. That seems like important work. Oh, yes. Evelyn waved her hand dismissively. Committee work, very social. Raising money for medical care sounds like more than social work to me, Malik said mildly. Takes skill to get people to open their wallets for causes they care about. Claire felt a flush of gratitude. She'd never had anyone defend her contributions before, especially not to her family. Thomas was studying Malik with new interest. You seem to understand fundraising. I've helped organize some community meals for families going through tough times. It's all about bringing people together around something they value. Malik turned to Claire. I bet you're good at making people feel comfortable enough to want to help. Claire felt something warm bloom in her chest. Is that what she did? Made people feel comfortable? She'd never thought of her work that way, but suddenly it seemed more valuable than writing checks and attending galas. She is good at that, Thomas said quietly, surprising everyone at the table. Your mother was the same way. She could make anyone feel welcome. The mention of her mother hung in the air for a moment. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears, but something more complicated. Relief, maybe, recognition. I wish I remembered more of her cooking, Claire said. I feel like I missed learning something important. It's never too late to learn, Malik said. Cooking is just another way of taking care of people you love. Evelyn cleared her throat delicately. Well, this has been lovely, but I should be getting home. Early meeting tomorrow. They moved back to the living room for coffee and the dessert Malik had prepared. A simple but elegant lemon tart. Claire found herself disappointed that the evening was ending. For the first time in years, she'd felt like they were actually talking to each other, rather than just exchanging polite conversation. Thank you for dinner, Claire, Thomas said as he prepared to leave. It was nice. We should do this more often. Claire's heart lifted. I'd like that. After her father and aunt left, Claire returned to the kitchen to find Malik cleaning up. She began helping without asking this time, and he didn't protest. That went better than I expected, Claire said, drying a wine glass. Your father's not as difficult as you made him sound. You were good with him, and with Evelyn. Claire paused. Thank you for what you said about my work. No one's ever... It was nice to hear. Malik looked at her seriously. I meant it. What you do matters, even if it doesn't always feel like it. They finished cleaning in comfortable quiet. When the last dish was put away, Malik gathered his knife case and remaining supplies. Well, he said, I should get going. Claire didn't want him to leave. The kitchen would feel empty without him, and she wasn't ready to be alone with just the memory of the evening. Would you... She hesitated. Would you like some tea? I mean, you've been working all day. You must be tired. Malik set down his bag. Tea sounds good. Claire made chamomile tea, one of the few things she could prepare without help, and they sat at the kitchen island where they'd worked together that afternoon. It felt natural, like something they'd done many times before. Can I ask you something? Claire said. Why did you become a private chef instead of working in restaurants? Control, Malik said simply. I like choosing my clients, setting my own schedule, and I like the intimacy of cooking in someone's home. Restaurants are about feeding crowds. This is about feeding people. Is that why you were so patient with me today, even when I was obviously panicking? Malik smiled. You weren't that bad. A little nervous, maybe. A little? Claire laughed. I was a complete mess. Everyone gets nervous about things that matter to them. He sipped his tea. The question is whether you let the nerves stop you or use them to fuel something better. Claire thought about that. I've been letting them stop me, I think, for a long time. From what? From everything. Trying new things, taking risks, being honest about what I want. The words came out in a rush. I've been so afraid of doing the wrong thing that I stopped doing anything real at all. Malik was quiet for a moment, considering her words. What would you try if you weren't afraid? The question hung between them. Claire looked at this man who had appeared in her kitchen 12 hours ago, and somehow made her feel more like herself than she had in years. What would she try? I think, she said slowly, I'd like to learn to cook. Really learn, not just basic survival skills. I could teach you. The offer was simple, casual, but it sent Claire's heart racing. You'd do that? Sure. You did well today. With some practice, you could be really good. Claire felt something shift inside her, like a door opening to a room she'd forgotten existed. I'd like that. Very much. Malik smiled, and she realized she wanted to see that smile again. Soon. Good, he said. When do you want to start? Tomorrow? The word came out before she could second-guess herself. Tomorrow works. They finished their tea, and Malik gathered his things. At the front door, he turned back to her. Thank you for tonight, Claire. It was different than most jobs. Different how? Most clients want me to be invisible. You made me feel welcome. Claire felt heat in her cheeks. You made me feel capable. That's not something I'm used to. You are capable. Don't forget that. After he left, Claire wandered through her quiet house, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of possibility. In the kitchen, she could still smell the herbs they'd used, still see the places where they'd worked side by side. She picked up her phone and typed a text. Thank you for everything today. The dinner was perfect. She stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it and typed something else. Thank you for today. Looking forward to tomorrow. She sent it before she could lose her nerve. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Me too. Get some rest. We have work to do. Claire smiled and headed upstairs, already wondering what she would learn tomorrow, already counting the hours until Malik would be back in her kitchen. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she was excited about tomorrow instead of just trying to get through it. In her bedroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her hair was slightly messed from the day's work, and there was a small flour smudge on her jeans that she'd missed. She looked happy, real. She decided she liked what she saw. Claire woke up before her alarm for the first time in months. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom windows, and instead of pulling the covers over her head like usual, she found herself eager to start the day. Malik would be here at 2 o'clock for her first cooking lesson. She spent the morning cleaning the kitchen that was already spotless, rearranging things that didn't need rearranging. Finally, she gave up pretending to be busy and admitted she was just excited. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Claire opened the door to find Malik standing there with his familiar bags, but this time he was smiling. Ready to learn? He asked. I think so. What are we making? Pasta? From scratch. Claire's confidence wavered. Isn't that complicated? Not really. Flour, eggs, salt, and patience. Come on. In the kitchen, Malik cleared a space on the marble counter and set out ingredients. First lesson, cooking is about feel as much as following recipes. We're going to make this with our hands. He showed her how to make a well in the flour, crack eggs into the center, and gradually work everything together. Claire's first attempt was clumsy. Flour everywhere, dough sticking to her fingers. Like this, Malik said, moving to stand behind her. He placed his hands over hers, guiding her movements. Feel how the dough changes as you work it. Claire tried to focus on the pasta, but she was very aware of Malik's presence behind her. His hands were warm and steady, and he smelled like soap and something clean she couldn't identify. When he stepped back, she missed the contact immediately. Try it now, he said. She worked the dough on her own, surprised when it began to feel smooth and elastic under her hands. It's working. You're a natural. I told you. Malik began cleaning up around her. Most people try to force it, but you're listening to what the dough needs. They spent the next hour rolling pasta sheets and cutting them into thin ribbons. Claire laughed when her first attempts came out crooked, but Malik just showed her how to adjust her technique. By the end, she was producing neat, even noodles. I can't believe I made this, she said, holding up a strand of pasta. Believe it. Tonight, you're eating something you created with your own hands. While the pasta cooked, they made a simple sauce with tomatoes, basil, and garlic. Claire watched Malik taste and adjust the seasonings, then handed her the spoon. What do you think it needs? Claire tasted carefully. More salt, and maybe something brighter? Trust your instincts. She added salt and a squeeze of lemon juice. The sauce transformed, becoming more vibrant and complex. Oh, that's so much better. Exactly. You're learning to cook with your senses, not just your eyes. They ate the pasta at the kitchen island, and Claire couldn't stop smiling. The noodles had the perfect texture, and the sauce was better than anything she'd ever ordered in a restaurant. This tastes like Italy, she said. Good food doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be made with care. After they cleaned up, Claire made tea again, and they sat talking until the sun began to set. Malik told her about growing up with his grandmother, about learning to feed a family on very little money. Claire found herself sharing stories about her mother, memories she hadn't talked about in years. She sounds like she was wonderful, Malik said. She was. I think she would have liked you. The words slipped out before Claire could stop them. She felt her cheeks heat. I mean, she would have appreciated how you made tonight special. Malik smiled. I think I would have liked her too. When he left that evening, Claire felt the same reluctance as the night before. The house felt too quiet without him. Over the next week, Malik came by every other day. They made soup, learned to roast vegetables, practiced knife skills. Claire found herself looking forward to these lessons more than anything else in her life. She loved learning from Malik, but more than that, she loved spending time with him. He was patient and encouraging, but he also challenged her. He made her feel capable and interesting. On Friday evening, as they finished making homemade bread, Claire's phone rang. Evelyn's name appeared on the screen. I should take this, Claire said apologetically. Claire, darling. Evelyn's voice was sweet but sharp. I wanted to chat about last week's dinner. Oh, it went well, didn't it? Dad seemed to enjoy himself. Yes, well, that's what I wanted to discuss. Evelyn paused. You seemed very comfortable with that chef. Claire felt her stomach tighten. Malik? He's very professional. I'm sure he is. But darling, you do realize how it looked? Having him join the conversation, treating him like a guest rather than hired help? He's not hired help, Evelyn. He's a professional chef. Of course, but there are appearances to consider. People talk, you know. And with your social position... Claire gripped the phone tighter. What are you saying exactly? Just that it's important to maintain appropriate boundaries, for everyone's sake. After Evelyn hung up, Claire sat staring at her phone. Malik was putting the bread in the oven, humming softly to himself. He looked so at home in her kitchen, so right there. But Evelyn's words echoed in her mind. Appearances, boundaries, people talk. Everything okay? Malik asked, noticing her expression. Fine, just my aunt checking in. But something had shifted. Claire felt the familiar weight of other people's expectations settling back on her shoulders. She was quiet for the rest of the evening, and Malik seemed to sense her mood change, though he didn't push her about it. The next morning, Claire woke up thinking about what Evelyn had said. She tried to dismiss it, but the worry lingered. What were people thinking about her lessons with Malik? About how comfortable she'd become around him? When Saturday arrived, and Malik came for their usual lesson, Claire found herself more distant. She was polite but formal, keeping conversation focused on cooking techniques rather than personal topics. Malik noticed the change. Did I do something wrong? He asked as they cleaned up. No, nothing like that. I think I just need to be more professional about this arrangement. Something flickered in Malik's eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. Professional? Right. I mean, you're providing a service, and I'm paying for lessons. It's better to keep things clear. Of course. Malik's voice was cooler now. Whatever you're comfortable with. But Claire wasn't comfortable. She felt miserable, like she was betraying something important. Still, Evelyn's warnings echoed in her mind. She had a reputation to maintain, a social position to consider. On Monday, Diana, her assistant, called with an update on an upcoming charity gala. "Oh, and I heard the most interesting thing at lunch yesterday," Diana said. "Someone mentioned seeing you at the farmer's market last week with a very handsome man. Anyone special?" Claire's heart raced. "Just someone helping me pick out ingredients?" Well, you looked happy, relaxed. It was nice to see." After Diana hung up, Claire felt sick. If people were already talking, noticing, what would they say if they knew about the cooking lessons? About how much she looked forward to seeing Malik? How much she'd come to care about his opinion? That afternoon, Malik arrived for their planned lesson, but Claire met him at the door instead of letting him in. "I think we should take a break from the lessons," she said quickly. "I've learned so much already, and I have some travel coming up and—" Malik studied her face. "Claire, what's really going on?" "Nothing. I just think it's time to get back to my normal routine." "Your normal routine of what? Sitting in this house alone, afraid to try anything new?" The words stung because they were true. That's not fair. "Isn't it? A week ago you were excited about learning, about trying new things. Now you're hiding behind excuses." Malik shook his head. "Someone got to you, told you to be careful about appearances." Claire's silence confirmed his guess. Malik's expression softened, but there was sadness in it now. "I thought you were different," he said quietly. "I thought you were brave enough to decide for yourself what you wanted." "It's complicated." "It's only complicated if you make it complicated." Malik picked up his bags. "When you're ready to stop letting other people run your life, you know where to find me." He left, and Claire stood in her empty doorway, watching him drive away. The house felt hollow around her, like all the warmth and life had been sucked out of it. For 3 days, she tried to return to her old routine. Committee meetings, charity lunches, shopping for things she didn't need. But everything felt flat and meaningless. Food tasted like nothing. She found herself staring at the pasta machine Malik had helped her use, remembering how proud she'd felt making something with her own hands. On Thursday evening, she stood in her kitchen trying to make the simple tomato sauce they'd prepared together. She burned the garlic, oversalted everything, and ended up throwing the whole mess in the garbage. She sat at the island and cried. For the sauce, for the lessons, for the way Malik had looked at her when she'd pushed him away. Mrs. Benton returned from Florida that weekend and found Claire listlessly rearranging her mother's china. "You look terrible, dear," the older woman said bluntly. "What's wrong?" Claire told her everything, about the cooking lessons, about how happy she'd been, about Evelyn's warnings and her own fears. Mrs. Benton listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or making sympathetic sounds. "That aunt of yours has been stirring up trouble since you were small," Mrs. Benton said when Claire finished. "Always worried about what people think instead of what makes sense. But she's not wrong about appearances. People do notice things." "Of course they do. Question is, do you care more about what strangers think or about what makes you happy?" Mrs. Benton fixed Claire with a stern look. "Your mother didn't raise you to live your life for other people's approval." "What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm reading too much into what happened between us?" "What happened between you?" Claire thought about it. "He made me feel like myself, like the person I could be if I wasn't so afraid all the time." "That doesn't sound like a mistake to me." That night, Claire lay awake thinking about what Mrs. Benton had said. She thought about Malik's hands guiding hers as they made pasta, about the way he'd defended her work to Evelyn, about the sadness in his eyes when she'd sent him away. She was tired of being afraid, tired of letting other people's voices drown out her own instincts, tired of choosing safety over everything else. On Sunday morning, she found Malik's business card and called his number. It rang 4 times before he answered. "Malik, it's Claire." Her heart was racing. "I owe you an apology." A pause. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. I was wrong. I let fear make me stupid, and I hurt you in the process." She took a deep breath. "I want to explain, if you'll let me." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm at my studio. Do you know where Ponce City Market is?" "I'll find it." An hour later, Claire stood outside a small storefront in the converted market, reading the simple sign, "Reed Catering." Through the window, she could see Malik working at a large prep table. He looked up when she knocked, and something passed across his face. Surprise, maybe, or hope. He opened the door and stepped aside to let her in. The space was small, but efficiently organized, with professional equipment and ingredients stored in careful order. It smelled like the spices he used, warm and complex. "This is where you work?" "Most of the time, when I'm not in other people's kitchens." There was a slight edge to his voice. Claire deserved that. "Malik, I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just for canceling the lessons, but for how I did it. You didn't deserve that." He leaned against the prep table, arms crossed. "What changed your mind?" "My aunt called after our dinner. Made some comments about appearances, about maintaining boundaries." Claire felt heat in her cheeks. "I got scared." "Scared of what?" "Of what people would think. Of what it might mean that I was spending so much time with you, that I was—" She struggled for the words. "That I was developing feelings for you." The admission hung in the air between them. Malik's expression softened, but he didn't speak. "I know that's not your problem," Claire continued quickly. "You were just doing your job, and I made it weird by reading more into it than was there. But I wanted you to know that when I pushed you away, it wasn't about you. It was about me being a coward." "Claire." Malik's voice was gentle now. "Look at me." She met his eyes, expecting to see pity or professional kindness. Instead, she saw something that made her breath catch. "You weren't reading more into it than was there," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been thinking about you too. About those afternoons in your kitchen. About the way you laugh when you get something right. About how brave you were with your family that first night." He moved closer. "I've been thinking about all of it." Claire's heart was racing. "Really?" "Really, but I won't be someone you have to hide or be ashamed of." "I'm not ashamed of you. I'm ashamed of me. Of how easily I let other people's opinions matter more than my own feelings." Malik considered this. "What are your feelings, Claire?" "No one else's opinions, just yours." Claire thought about the question, about everything that had happened between them, about the empty days since she'd sent him away. "I think," she said slowly, "that I've been half asleep for years, and being around you wakes me up, makes me want to try things, learn things, be better than I am." She met his eyes. "I think I'm falling for you, and it scares me, but not as much as the thought of going back to the way things were." Malik smiled then, the first real smile she'd seen from him since that night in her kitchen. "I've been falling for you too." He reached for her hands, and she let him take them. His touch was warm and familiar and right. "So where does that leave us?" Claire asked. "I don't know, but I'd like to find out." Malik's thumb traced across her knuckles. "If you're sure you're ready to stop running." "I'm ready." "Even if people talk?" "Let them talk." The words came out stronger than she felt, but saying them made them more true. I'm tired of living for an audience. Malik leaned down and kissed her then, soft and careful at first, then deeper when she kissed him back. Claire felt like she was coming home to a place she'd never been before. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. So, Malik said, "Want to help me prep for tomorrow's client? I could use an assistant." "I thought you said I was a natural." "You are, but you still need practice." Claire laughed and tied on the apron he handed her. Working beside him felt even better than before, now that she wasn't fighting her feelings about it. They moved around each other easily, falling into the rhythm they'd found in her kitchen. For the first time in her life, Claire felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Whatever came next, family pressure, social gossip, her own fears, they would face it together. She was done running from the best thing that had ever happened to her. She was ready to fight for what she wanted. 2 weeks passed in a beautiful blur. Claire spent most afternoons at Malik's studio, learning new techniques and helping with his catering prep. She was getting better. Her knife work was cleaner, her seasoning more confident. But more than that, she was happy in a way she'd forgotten was possible. They kept their relationship quiet, not from shame, but from a desire to protect something precious while it was still new. Claire would arrive at the studio through the back entrance, and they would work side by side, talking and laughing and stealing kisses between clients. Some evenings, Malik would come to her house and they'd cook dinner together, then sit on her back porch talking until late. Claire learned that he'd started cooking to help his grandmother when arthritis made it hard for her to stand for long periods, that he'd worked his way through culinary school washing dishes and prep cooking, that he dreamed of opening his own restaurant someday, something small and personal. Malik learned that Claire had wanted to be a teacher before her mother's illness changed everything, that she still read children's books sometimes, imagining the classroom she'd never had, that she'd been lonely for so long, she'd almost forgotten what connection felt like. "You'd be a good teacher," Malik said one evening as they cleaned up after making his grandmother's cornbread recipe. "I'm 29, too old to start over." "Says who? My grandmother didn't learn to read until she was 40. People change careers all the time." The idea scared and thrilled Claire in equal measure. She'd spent so long thinking her life was set, predetermined by money and family expectations. But watching Malik pursue his passion with such dedication made her wonder what she might accomplish if she stopped being afraid. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Claire was at Malik's studio, helping him prepare for a dinner party that evening, when her phone rang. Jordan Vale's name appeared on the screen, and her good mood evaporated. "I should take this," she told Malik. "It's my ex." "Claire, darling." Jordan's voice was smooth and familiar and immediately set her on edge. "I hope you don't mind me calling. I was in the neighborhood and thought we might grab coffee." "I'm busy, Jordan. What do you need?" "Can't an old friend just want to catch up? I've been hearing interesting things about you lately." Claire's stomach dropped. "What kind of things?" "Oh, you know how people talk. Something about cooking lessons? A new hobby?" His voice carried that subtle mockery she remembered too well. "I'm curious to meet this teacher of yours." Before Claire could respond, Jordan appeared in the doorway of the studio. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, expensively dressed, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to question his place in the world. "Jordan." Claire's voice came out smaller than she intended. "What are you doing here?" "Like I said, I was curious." Jordan's eyes swept the small space, taking in the commercial equipment and modest surroundings. His gaze landed on Malik, who had straightened from his prep work and was watching the exchange carefully. "You must be the chef," Jordan said, extending his hand. "Jordan Vale. I'm an old friend of Claire's." Malik shook his hand briefly. Malik Reed. Malik. Interesting name. Jordan's smile was sharp. So you're teaching our Claire to cook? How domestic. The word domestic carried a weight of condescension that made Claire's cheeks burn. She could see Malik processing the slight, his jaw tightening slightly. Claire's a natural student, Malik said evenly. She has good instincts. I'm sure she does. Jordan turned back to Claire. I have to say, darling, this is quite a change from your usual interests. Very hands-on. Claire felt frozen, caught between her old world and her new one. She could see the calculation in Jordan's eyes, the way he was cataloging details to share later with their mutual friends. She could see Malik watching her, waiting to see how she would handle this. It's just a hobby, she heard herself say. Something to pass the time. The words came out automatically, a reflexive defense, but she regretted them immediately. She saw something shift in Malik's expression. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. Of course, Jordan said smoothly. Though I have to wonder if this is the best use of your time. Don't you have that hospital gala coming up? Mother mentioned you're chairing the committee. Yes, the gala. Claire felt like she was underwater, everything muffled and strange. Jordan spent another 10 minutes making conversation that felt like an interrogation, asking seemingly innocent questions about how Claire had found Malik, how often they met, whether she was getting her money's worth from the lessons. Each question felt designed to diminish what they were doing, to make it seem frivolous or inappropriate. Finally, he left, but not before making a show of looking around the studio one more time. Charming place, he said to Malik. Very authentic. After Jordan was gone, the studio felt different, smaller somehow, less safe. Claire stood staring at the door, her hands shaking. Friend of yours? Malik asked quietly. Ex-boyfriend. We dated for 2 years. Claire turned to face him. I'm sorry about that. He can be condescending, entitled, racist. Malik's voice was calm, but Claire could see the anger underneath. Yeah, I noticed. I should have said something, defended you. You should have defended yourself. Just a hobby? Something to pass the time? Claire flinched. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? She didn't have a good answer. In the moment, faced with Jordan's judgment, she'd fallen back into old patterns. She'd minimized what mattered to her to avoid confrontation. I was surprised. He caught me off guard. This is who you are around those people, Claire. This is how you act when your real life runs into your social life. Malik began cleaning his knives with sharp, precise movements. I get it, but I won't be your secret shame. You're not, aren't I? When push comes to shove, what am I? Your cooking teacher? Your hobby? Your way of slumming it for a while? That's not fair. But even as she said it, Claire could see how it looked from his perspective, how her reaction to Jordan had confirmed every doubt he might have had about their relationship. Isn't it? You got scared when your aunt made a comment. You shut me out for a week because someone might talk. And today, when faced with your ex, you made me sound like the help. Claire felt tears burning her eyes. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm sure you are. But sorry doesn't change the fact that when it mattered, you chose their opinion over us. Malik finished cleaning up and gathered his things. I think we need some space, Claire. Time for you to figure out what you actually want. I want you. I want this. Do you? Or do you want the idea of it? The romance of dating someone different, as long as no one important sees? The accusation hit her like a slap. That's not what this is. Then prove it. Malik stopped at the door and looked back at her. When you're ready to choose me publicly, When you're ready to defend what we have instead of hiding from it, let me know. Until then, I can't do this." He left, and Claire stood alone in the empty studio. The prep work they'd been doing together sat half-finished on the counter. The kitchen towel she'd been using still smelled like the herbs they'd been chopping. Everything reminded her of what she'd just lost. She drove home in a daze, replaying the scene over and over. She could see now how her reaction had hurt Malik, how it had confirmed his worst fears about their relationship. But she could also see how impossible the situation felt. Her life, her social circle, her family's expectations. They all seemed designed to make a relationship with Malik difficult. That evening, Evelyn called. "Claire, darling, I had the most interesting conversation today. Jordan Vale mentioned he'd met your cooking instructor." Claire's heart sank. Of course, Jordan had called Evelyn immediately. "Did he?" "He seemed quite concerned about you. Said this man seemed very familiar with you. Almost inappropriate." "There was nothing inappropriate about it." "I'm sure there wasn't, darling. But appearances matter. People are starting to notice, to wonder. And with the hospital gala next week, where you're representing the family..." Evelyn didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. The implication was clear. Claire needed to be above reproach, needed to maintain the family reputation. After the call, Claire sat in her empty kitchen, surrounded by the tools and ingredients Malik had helped her choose. She could make pasta now, could roast vegetables without burning them, could taste when something needed more salt or acid. But none of it meant anything without him to share it with. Mrs. Benton found her there the next morning, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at nothing. "Oh, honey." The older woman sat down beside her. "What happened?" Claire told her about Jordan's visit, about the fight with Malik, about Evelyn's call. Mrs. Benton listened with increasing anger. "That Jordan boy was always trouble," she said firmly. "And your aunt needs to mind her own business." "But maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being naive about this whole thing." "Naive about what? Caring about someone who treats you well? Learning something that makes you happy?" "About thinking it could work. Malik and me. We're from different worlds." Mrs. Benton stood up abruptly. "Child, that is the biggest load of nonsense I've ever heard. Your mother would be ashamed to hear you talking like this." "My mother married someone from her own social circle." "Your mother married your father because she loved him, not because he was suitable. And she would have loved anyone who made you as happy as that young man does." Mrs. Benton's voice was fierce. "You think she gave a damn about what Evelyn thought when she was choosing her life?" Claire had never heard Mrs. Benton speak so passionately about anything. The older woman had worked for their family for 15 years, had watched Claire grow up, had been more of a mother figure than anyone since Claire's mom died. "I don't know how to fight for this," Claire said quietly. "I don't know how to be brave enough." "Yes, you do. You just have to decide that he's worth it, that you're worth it." Mrs. Benton softened her voice. "Honey, I've watched you sleepwalk through your life for 3 years. The only time I've seen you truly awake was these past few weeks. You think I don't know why?" Claire spent the next 2 days thinking about what Mrs. Benton had said. She thought about her mother, who had indeed chosen love over convention when she'd insisted on a small, intimate wedding instead of the society affair Evelyn had wanted. She thought about the life she'd been living, safe, approved of, and completely empty. On Friday evening, she called her father. "Dad, can we talk? Really talk?" They met at his downtown office, the same sterile space where he'd spent most of Claire's childhood. But tonight, Thomas seemed different, older, more tired, but also more present than usual. "What's on your mind?" he asked. Claire had planned a careful speech, but when the moment came, she found herself telling him the truth instead. About Malik, about how happy she'd been, about how afraid she was of choosing wrong. Thomas listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Your mother would have liked him," he said finally. "How do you know?" "From what you've told me. He sounds like someone who sees you, really sees you. That's what your mother did for me." Thomas's voice grew softer. "I've been a poor father since she died, Claire. Too caught up in my own grief to see that you were grieving too." Claire felt tears starting. "Dad, I've watched you disappear these past few years, become smaller, quieter, more careful. I thought that was normal, the way grief worked." He looked at her directly. "But when I saw you at that dinner, with him there, you looked like yourself again. Like the daughter I remember." "Evelyn thinks it's a mistake, that people will talk." "People always talk. The question is whether you care more about their talking or about your happiness." Thomas stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. "I made a lot of choices based on what other people expected. Built a successful business, married the right woman from the right family, lived the life I was supposed to live." "But you loved Mom?" "I did, completely. But I was lucky that duty and love aligned for me." He turned back to her. "They don't always. When they don't, you have to choose." "What would you choose?" "I can't make that choice for you, Claire. But I can tell you this. I'd rather have a daughter who was happy and brave than one who was proper and miserable." Claire left her father's office feeling lighter than she had in days. She knew what she needed to do, but she also knew it wouldn't be easy. She would have to face people like Jordan and Evelyn. She would have to be public about her choice, defend it when challenged. But first, she had to see if Malik would give her another chance. She drove to his studio, but it was dark and locked. She tried his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. What if he was done with her completely? What if she'd waited too long? She went home and spent Saturday morning calling every restaurant and catering company in the city, trying to track him down. Finally, a chef at one of his regular client venues told her he was catering a private event that evening at a gallery downtown. Claire spent the afternoon getting ready, not for society people or family expectations, but for Malik. She wanted to look like herself, the person she'd become in his kitchen, not the person she'd been before she met him. At 7 o'clock, she arrived at the gallery opening. The space was crowded with artists and art lovers, a mix of ages and backgrounds very different from Claire's usual social events. She felt nervous, but also excited. This was Malik's world, and she wanted to be part of it. She found him in the back, directing servers and putting finishing touches on elegant appetizers. He looked up when he saw her and froze. "Claire, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you. To apologize. Really apologize this time." Malik glanced around the busy kitchen. "I'm working." "I know. I'll wait." She spent the next 2 hours sitting at the bar, watching Malik work. He was in his element here, confident and skilled, directing his small team with quiet authority. People clearly respected him, sought his opinion, treated him as the professional he was. When the event wound down and the kitchen was cleaned, Malik finally approached her. "You waited." "I said I would." He sat down beside her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "I owe you an apology," Claire said finally. "Not just for Tuesday, but for all of it. For being a coward, for caring more about what other people thought than about us, for making you feel like something to be ashamed of." "Claire, let me finish." Please. She turned to face him fully. I've spent my whole life trying to be what other people wanted me to be. The perfect daughter, the suitable girlfriend, the proper society lady. And I was miserable. Completely, utterly miserable. Malik was listening intently now. Then I met you, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Like the person I could be if I stopped being so afraid. Claire's voice grew stronger. I want to choose you, Malik. Publicly, proudly, completely. I want to choose us. What about your family? Your social circle? What about when people like Jordan show up? Let them show up. Let them talk. Claire reached for his hands. I'm done hiding what makes me happy. I'm done living for other people's approval. Malik studied her face. And when your aunt calls? When you're at some society event and people ask uncomfortable questions? I'll tell them I'm in love with an amazing man who makes me want to be braver and better than I am. Claire smiled. I'll tell them they can either accept that or find someone else to judge. Something shifted in Malik's expression. Hope, maybe, mixed with lingering caution. This won't be easy, Claire. Dating me means facing prejudice, dealing with people who will question your choices, maybe losing some friends. Then they weren't really friends to begin with. Claire squeezed his hands. I'm not saying I won't be scared sometimes. I probably will be. But I'm more scared of losing you than I am of what other people think. Malik was quiet for a long moment, searching her face. Finally, he smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him since Tuesday. In that case, he said, I have something to ask you. What? The hospital gala next week. The one you're chairing. Do you have a date? Claire's heart leaped. Are you asking? I'm asking. If you're ready to make us public, that seems like the place to start. Claire thought about it. The hospital gala would be attended by everyone in her social circle. Family, friends, board members, people like Jordan and Evelyn. It would be impossible to hide or minimize Malik's presence there. Yes, she said firmly. I'd love that. Malik leaned over and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Claire felt like she could take on the world. Just so you know, Malik said, I clean up pretty well. Good, because we're going to turn some heads. Are you ready for that? Claire thought about her father's words, about her mother's example, about the empty years she'd spent trying to be perfect for other people. I'm ready. A week later, Claire stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the emerald green dress she'd chosen for the gala. It was beautiful, but not flashy, elegant, but not trying too hard. Most importantly, it felt like her. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Benton called up that her date had arrived. Claire took a deep breath and headed downstairs. Malik stood in her foyer wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, holding a small bouquet of herbs tied with ribbon, basil and rosemary and thyme. You look beautiful, he said, offering her the bouquet. So do you. And he did. The formal wear highlighted his natural elegance, made him look like he belonged anywhere he chose to be. Ready for this? He asked. Claire took his offered arm. With you, I'm ready for anything. They walked into the gala together, and Claire felt the moment when people noticed them. The subtle pause in conversation, the sideways glances, the whispered questions. But instead of shrinking from the attention, she held her head high and kept her hand on Malik's arm. Evelyn appeared within minutes, her smile brittle. Claire, darling, how lovely you look. Her eyes flicked to Malik. And you brought a guest. Yes. Aunt Evelyn, I'd like you to meet my boyfriend, Malik Reed. Malik, this is my aunt, Evelyn Hargrove. The word boyfriend hung in the air like a declaration. Evelyn's smile became even more strained, but she shook Malik's hand. "Charming to meet you," she said. "And what do you do, Mr. Reed?" "I'm a chef. I own a catering company." "How entrepreneurial." Before the conversation could become more uncomfortable, Thomas appeared at Claire's side. "Dad." Claire smiled genuinely. "You remember Malik?" "Of course. Good to see you again." Thomas shook Malik's hand warmly. "I understand congratulations are in order." "Sir?" "Claire tells me you two are dating. I'm happy for her. For both of you." Claire felt a rush of love for her father. His public approval meant everything, and she could see that Malik understood its significance. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, conversations, and carefully managed social interactions. Some people were curious, but polite. Others were coolly distant. A few, like Jordan, were openly hostile. But Claire handled it all. When Jordan made a snide comment about interesting choices, she responded calmly that she'd never been happier with a choice in her life. When someone asked pointed questions about how she and Malik had met, she told the story proudly, without apology. Most importantly, she didn't hide her feelings for Malik. She introduced him as her boyfriend, not her friend or her date. She danced with him, laughed with him, held his hand during dinner. She made it clear to everyone that this wasn't a casual relationship or a phase. This was love, serious and real. "How are you holding up?" Malik asked during a quiet moment on the terrace. "Better than I expected. You?" "Same. Your father's been great. And some of these people are actually pretty nice once you get past the initial awkwardness." Claire laughed. "Some of them. Others." She glanced back at the ballroom, where she could see Evelyn holding court with a group of society matrons, no doubt discussing Claire's situation. "Having regrets?" Malik asked quietly. Claire looked at him, handsome and kind, and completely comfortable in his own skin, even in this environment that wasn't made for him. She thought about the alternative, going back to her empty house, her empty life, her endless round of safe, meaningless activities. "Not a single one," she said firmly. They stayed until the end of the gala, dancing to the last song, while the ballroom slowly emptied around them. Claire felt like Cinderella, except instead of running away at midnight, she was choosing to stay. "So," Malik said as they gathered their things. "That wasn't so bad." "No, it was actually kind of wonderful." Claire smiled up at him. "Ready to face the gossip tomorrow?" "With you, bring it on." They drove back to Claire's house in comfortable silence, the city lights streaming past the windows. Claire felt exhausted, but exhilarated, like she'd climbed a mountain and discovered the view was even better than she'd hoped. At her front door, Malik turned to her. "Thank you for tonight, for choosing us publicly. I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for being worth choosing." Claire reached up and kissed him, slow and thorough. "Want to come in? I could make us some tea." "You could make us tea?" Malik grinned. "Since when do you make tea?" "Since I learned from an excellent teacher that the best things in life are made with your own hands." Inside, Claire put the kettle on while Malik loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. They moved around each other in the kitchen with practiced ease, falling into the rhythm they'd found weeks ago. "So what happens now?" Claire asked as they sat at the island with their tea. Now we build a life together, day by day, meal by meal." Malik reached across the table and took her hand. "It won't always be easy. People will have opinions, make assumptions. Your social circle might change." "I'm counting on it." Malik laughed. "You've changed, Claire. Hargrove." "For the better, I hope." "Definitely for the better." He lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles. "I love you." It was the first time either of them had said the words out loud. Claire felt her heart skip and swell. "I love you too," she said. so much that it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means something matters enough to fight for. They finished their tea and went upstairs together. In Claire's bedroom, Malik helped her out of her gala dress, kissing her shoulders as he lowered the zipper. They made love slowly, tenderly, like they had all the time in the world. Afterward, lying in Malik's arms, Claire felt completely at peace for the first time in years. Through the windows, she could see the city she'd grown up in, the society she'd spent her life trying to please. But none of that seemed important now. What mattered was here in this bed, in this house, in this life she was building with someone who loved her exactly as she was. "What are you thinking about?" Malik asked, his voice drowsy. "Tomorrow, next week, next year." Claire settled more comfortably against his chest. "All the meals we'll cook together, all the places we'll go, all the ways we'll take care of each other." Sounds perfect to me. It does, doesn't it? Claire smiled in the darkness. Who knew happiness could be so simple? Your grandmother would have liked that idea. What? That happiness is simple, like good food. You just need the right ingredients and someone to share it with. Claire thought about that as she drifted off to sleep. She'd spent so long looking for complicated solutions to the emptiness in her life. But the answer had been simple all along: courage, love, and someone worth cooking for. In the morning, she would wake up in Malik's arms and make him breakfast. Imperfect, but made with love. She would face whatever gossip or family drama came her way. She would continue learning to be brave, to choose happiness over safety, to build a life that felt real. But tonight, she was simply content. She had found her person, her place, her purpose. She had found herself, and she was never going back to who she'd been before.